This is The Final Word with Adam Collins, that's me, and Geoff Lemon, that's him. I can see him down the Zoom screen. You might be seeing him next to me on a YouTube screen. You might be hearing him through your headphones. Who's to know? One thing I do know is that everywhere you go, you're hearing one thing over and over. It's getting louder and louder. Steve-O, Steve-O, Steve-O for England.
Steve-O. Steve-O.
We are going to talk about two of the more remarkable hours in the county championship in recent years down at Canterbury on Friday with the man himself, the Wisden Cricketer of the Year, one of the 5 in 2021. Darren Stevens, 45 years of age, is going to be making his debut on The Final Word. That's all.
No one mentions that as well. No one brings that up. Like, it's an often overlooked, a glossed over fact that D. Stevens has a 45 in the age.
I've almost done that intentionally because I know we've done the interview already, and I know you ask him a question that's like that. So that'll be a nice tie back in about an hour and a half or something like that. So he joins us to talk about his remarkable ride in the professional game, which is only getting crazier by the week after his 190 from 165 balls. And not just that, it's not just the quantum, it's not just the score, it's the circumstance, it's the records, it's the vibe, it's the everything, it's the constitution. We have plenty to get through before that. We're talking to Isabelle Westbury about a big few days of her own. She broke a big yarn on Sunday in the Telegraph, which led towards the BCCI backflipping, and that's not an easy thing to achieve. So we'll have Izzy on for a bit to talk through the story, to talk through the sorry state of affairs and how she was able to very quickly engineer this reposition, shall we say, from the BCCI. There's some other very good news in the women's game, which we'll get to. There's some nerd pledge. Hello again, Geoff. I've already said hello to you, but let's say hello again. How are you going?
It's nice to be formally welcomed to my own program, and made to feel that I have a home here. Some segments that we don't always do, but we do sometimes. Winnie updates. Some people say this is their favourite part of the show. What is your tiny or slightly less tiny child doing?
Okay. Instead of talking about what she's doing, I'm not sure people are interested in just knowing what words she's saying, which there are about 25 for H and I reckon now. She's a right little chatterbox. I know, right? It's pretty cool.
That's good. There are some evenings, like, when it's late, maybe after a day night, one day international, when you're trying to write a piece. There are times when I don't have 25 words.
Yeah, she's going really well on that front. Still not walking, but perhaps the most interesting thing that's happened to Winnie in the last few days was that we were at Ali Pali on Saturday afternoon with a couple of the other couples from our antenatal class, very middle class, very middle-aged thing to be doing. Just sitting there, having a beer, having a pizza, very, very normal adult things, adulting, as it were. And I was carrying back a tray with 5 drinks in it, a can of Coke and 4 beers. And one thing led to another, and the chap I was passing a beer to, he didn't quite collect it properly, and another beer started tipping over, and it was like I could see it in slow motion. Winnie was sitting beneath us as the entire pint started pouring over the top of her head. So she hasn't been baptised, Winnie, and nor will she be, but she's in effect been baptised. There's some lovely sort of story in 4-part photos. Someone took a photo of me carrying this tray of beers, then one passing them round, and then one of Winnie. I took one of Winnie with our friends, trying to dry her with 2 nappies because I thought this will absorb the beer, and then one of Rach holding her in a blanket with Winnie looking absolutely furious at us. But to be fair, she was resilient. She didn't cry. It was more just one of those, what the fuck has just happened to me? Why am I having a bath in the park? And why does it smell different to the normal bath I have?
Well, that'll teach you for going out for a drink and a pizza with Ben Duckett.
We'll mention Ben Duckett later, who's in the runs this weekend. But no, it was... and then, just to add to this, the second part was that later in the afternoon, so, we dry her off, change of costume, appropriately so, given we watched Eurovision later in the night. And she... and then Rach and our other friend basically did it again. She had a second pint start pouring over her head. I mean, you wouldn't dream of it. What is it? Once is to do something. Once is negligent. Second is
once maybe unfortunate. Twice begins to look like negligence.
Yes, whatever it is, it wasn't great parenting. But no, she's carelessness. Sorry, but
Lady Bracknell. To lose one parent might be a misfortune. To lose 2 begins to look like carelessness.
No, but all told, she's going well, even having been baptised in beer. It might be the start of something, hopefully not. So that is my Winnie update for you, Geoff.
Nice. Well, the other segment that we do even less frequently, but occasionally, I think we should do the milk round. Because those mad bastards at Oak, who still don't sponsor this show, and they should, they produce a lot of new flavours sporadically, but not speriodically. And when that happens, lots of people send them to us because they know we're interested in this. So I picked up what is a carton of s'more flavoured milk. You spent time in America. Are you familiar with
I've seen the carton. Much like you, I've been receiving DMs about this, and I've seen the s'more variety, and it looks pretty fucking good. Get in there, I reckon.
But are you familiar with the main ingredient? Like, did you eat those? Did you sit around a campfire with some scouts or something in the USA and cook?
Yeah,
s'mores?
I reckon I did. I reckon I did at a friend's cabin when I was studying in the States. I remember one night in particular, I was playing American football that season, which seems astonishing when you look at me now to think that I was playing a sport which required to be incredibly muscular and all the rest of it. But I did, albeit mostly as the punter. And we lost the game, and it was the same night that Hawthorn were playing Essendon in the 2001 preliminary final. So knowing that if we had made it through, if we won that night, I was going to do something reckless like put a $2,000 flight on my dad's credit card without telling him and fly home for the grand final. I did as the only responsible thing I knew what to do at the time, which was drink a ton of beer and fall asleep and not watch any of the game. So very responsible 17-year-old behaviour. But
it was prophylactic. Like that probably was actually the better
it
of
was.
the two
I
options.
think in hindsight that was the right thing to do. But that feels like the kind of night with the bonfire out. It was only a couple of weeks after September 11, and I'll always remember it for another pal of mine got out his saxophone and started playing the national anthem. And such was the fervour of the time, everybody sung along. I mean, this was a teenage party. I mean, like you'd imagine on television, on a movie or whatever it was, in a cabin somewhere. It was very rainy and windy that night as well. And everyone just started singing Land of the Free, Home of the Brave. I mean, this actually happened. Couldn't make it up.
Can you imagine someone trying that in Australia?
Oh.
Can you imagine, like, with the absolute shitful dirge of a song that we have as the national anthem? Can you, like, even feigning the enthusiasm?
Yeah, it just wouldn't happen. We interpret patriotism differently. But I think at that particular juncture, that moment in history, I don't think in America you would necessarily see people at a party doing that, but it was just that sweet spot.
I'm sure you would in some
but
places.
that time when nationalism was rife, shall we say.
Well, this is a long way of saying that a s'more, if you don't know what one is when you toast a marshmallow and then put it with a piece of chocolate in between two graham crackers. I don't really know what a graham cracker is, but I assume that Graham invented them. Anyway, that's some sort of snack that you have on campfires, and now it's in milk form. I'm not sure how this is going to go, because with chocolate as an ingredient, generally that's just going to be the dominant flavour and it will just taste like chocolate milk. So let's see what they've managed to do.
I'm so jealous right now. Geoff's really getting stuck in on the first sip.
All right, the chocolate's a strong theme. That's definitely what's coming in first. But there is something biscuity. There's a biscuity undertone, almost like it could be a butternut snap or something, that kind of goldeny tasting biscuit. I'm going to have to have another look for the marshmallow.
As you're doing it, Winnie will now take a big swig of water and go, I want you to do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest here. I'm not finding a lot of marshmallow, but I am finding more than chocolate. So is it marshmallow? I don't know, but it's something else. There's another dimension in there anyway. But look, there are several new flavours going around, so we might have to have a look at them in the weeks.
Let's do it. I'm looking forward to you not saving them for me, because that would be weird, holding milk for a number of months, but making sure that when I return...
It's not going to last.
This was what Clemo did when I got out of hotel quarantine last year. He had all of the new Oak range waiting in his fridge when I got to Adelaide for the first test. And I expect you'll do something similar for me when I get to Hobart, which is where the first test will be played this year and where I will end up in hotel quarantine. Between now and that test being played, though, Geoff, I suspect this won't be the last time that we have on our run sheet sandpaper stuff. I suspect this will come up a couple of times at least between now. There'll be more spot fires, shall we say, around the sandpaper debacle between now and then. When we recorded last week, I did an extensive segment. We're not going to do that again today, but Geoff, there was quite a bit of new stuff on the weekend in the reporting we saw, which is always the way. When a story breaks early in the week, good reporters realise that Saturday's the day to do your longer piece, and that's what Chris Barrett, who made a cameo from Singapore, is of course the Southeast Asia correspondent for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age at the moment, but he wrote a long piece. He was of course with us on that tour and broke more stories than he had hot meals over there, as did Peter Lawler, Dan Brettig and others. I mean, they were all into it.
Yeah, so there were a few different things going on. Wednesday-ish or Thursday, whatever it was the Cricket Australia response with interim CEO, as we're still calling him, Nick Hockley, despite having been there for quite a long time, saying what you would expect, which is that there will be no further investigation and that they feel everything's fine and they've looked into it all very thoroughly and there are no worries at all, which is obviously why there was a giant furore about who knew what, because nobody knows anything about what actually went on. They also put out this information that they'd contacted Cameron Bancroft, who said that he had nothing more to add, which you probably would say that, wouldn't you, if you were Cameron Bancroft, considering what had happened in response to his comments. But then Saturday, well, it was Chris Barrett writing that Cricket Australia had actually threatened to call off the tour during the second test, so before all the ball tampering stuff happened, that the then chair, David Peaver, had got on the phone with Chris Nanzani, the boss of Cricket South Africa, and threatened to cancel the whole thing in a way that was taken very seriously. The Pete Lawler story was that, and he'd sort of floated this earlier, that a senior player had done this, and eventually on that weekend piece it came out that it was Usman Khawaja, had stood up in the rooms at the time and said that the team needed to take blame collectively and not let one or two or three people go up there and say that it was them, and was overruled in that suggestion. And then Dan Brettig's piece that the review, there was a players' review as well as a review into Cricket Australia, and they were lumped together when they were released. So the players' review, led by Rick McCosker, former player, did actually try to take some responsibility for what had happened in a more general sense, saying that everybody had been involved in a lowering of standards. And so the McCosker contention was that had been lost, and people now see the players who weren't named as being unrepentantly involved, or not admitting that they're involved, when McCosker thinks that to some degree they did, at least admit responsibility for it, which is, but is still in a pretty vague way. Anyway, that's the kind of general wrap-up of everything that's been going on.
And I think with all of those stories did important things. So even that Rick McCosker report that Brettig gets into the nuts and bolts of, I mean, it was really worth remembering that, according to the report, it was bundled in to go alongside the cultural review because there's quite a bit in there. And I reckon that at the time there was so much of emphasis on what was going on in the broader CA cultural review that there were bits missed around what went on around the culture of the team, specifically the culture of ball maintenance and ball management, what we went into in great depth with Pete Lawler last week and has been written about extensively in the last 2 weeks, I suppose now, in this report, there is quite a bit to be found, but because of the timing and the strategic and the media management, I suppose the communications management strategy at the time, which was trying to get past this as quickly as possible and get to the next summer, that there was some bits missed along the way. As for the collective responsibility element that Peter Lawler was writing about, this is the division, the idea that, well, either we're going to... Remember, at the very first, it was the senior group of players that Steve Smith said that in that infamous press conference. It wasn't even identifying the leadership group. It wasn't even identifying Cameron Bancroft as the sole person. It was kind of this acknowledgement that it was a leadership group, this nebulous idea of a leadership group that we had no idea who was in it. At the time, we thought that it might include the fast bowlers because they were involved in the previous leadership group powwow, which saw Glenn Maxwell omitted from the one-day team the season before. Of course, it turned out they weren't in it. But in the end, as you had in your book, the leadership group really meant the vice-captain. This put a bit more meat on the bones that there were dissenting opinions inside the dressing room. And I think that's good. Like, I'm glad that someone had the foresight, and I'm glad it was a senior player as well, to say that there is a better way of doing this than simply sort of throwing one guy to the wolves. And not that it was Cameron on his own. There was the captain and the vice-captain. But in terms of
Well, there was the captain. The vice captain at that point wasn't admitting any involvement at all and was being covered for.
Yeah, that's right. But I think here it's like it goes to that idea that Neil Manthorpe wrote a fantastic piece on his blog this weekend as well, going through every instance of modern day ball tampering, and it's fucking hilarious because there are so many, and some of them are utterly comical. But and his contention is that it wasn't just the incident with sandpaper, it was all the atmospherics around it, and it was the fact that it was a piece of sandpaper. And, you know, it's a good piece. I strongly recommend fetching it from his blog. But, yeah, that Usman Khawaja had the presence of mind in that exact crucial moment to say, hang on, there's a better way of doing this. In a way, it's a shame that they didn't go down that path, because at least had they have done that, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation today.
And also that there were suggestions from at least some people that you shouldn't go up there and do a press conference now, wait till tomorrow, wait till things have settled and do it then, which could have been good. But anyway, that's where we are, and we still don't know what we don't know.
No, we don't, but as I say, I'm sure there's going to be more, right? I mean, I think it's just not realistic to think that there will be more to this that comes out between now and the Ashes. So on that basis, if you're wanting to get past this in your CA, I just don't think the status quo is sustainable. To now, Nick Hockley, I heard his interview on Jared Waitley's show last week, and the attempt to get through it with so many outstanding questions, I just don't see that being viable. So it's kind of CA's move. Do they get on the front foot and try and find a way through this? Probably not, but do they reposition that way, or do they have to take it on incoming? The next time there's a shit sandwich, well, they'll have to eat it again and again and again and again. There's kind of no... I just don't see it being something that they can hope goes away, because there's so much of this that's left unknown.
Well, we know that major cricket boards do love taking action off their own bat, of their own initiative, without being pushed by any sort of public perception. And in that vein, I think we should talk to Isabelle Westbury.